crash? What happened?
We don't know yet. I asked Dubois, the designer, to come too.
Oh, there's no problem with my CFOX system. No accident should have occurred. Oh!
We can't get through on the wireless to either the Seafox or the Navy area. We have no idea what's going on over there.
This is terrible. My masterpiece is ruined. Oh, what am I gonna do?
Deep Fear was another late 90s survival horror title trying to cash in on the Resident Evil craze. A Sega production, its release in mid-1998 was at the tail end of the Sega Saturn's life. While released in Japan and Europe, it never saw a North American release. Deep Fear goes for a horror experience below the ocean's surface, an isolated military base. There are some interesting ideas with how the game handles our air supply, yet the game does little to put any challenge on the player with it or with combat. There's no limited inventory to deal with, and ammo is never in short supply. While an isolated military base under the ocean is a great setting, its exploration is ho-hum. Areas blur into one another. It's a far cry from what Resident Evil was able to achieve. Consider the fact that 1998 also saw the release of Resident Evil 2, and Deep Fear feels extra dated, like a title that should have waited until the release of the Dreamcast. That said, Deep Fear does have its merits. It's one of the better cases of early survival horror cheese, from its hammy voice acting to its memorable cast of characters. It helps make up for some of the lackluster gameplay. It's by no means an essential play. If you do have a passing interest for the earlier days of survival horror, Deep Fear is worth looking into. You can do much better, but you can do worse.
Okay, Mookie, let's slide on into home.
Deep Fear begins with a space pod re-entering Earth's atmosphere, crashing in the Pacific Ocean. The Seafox submarine goes to investigate. The Seafox takes a space pod to the Big Table, a military vessel refueling and research station 300 meters below the Pacific Ocean. I love this music during the opening cutscene. It gets you pumped up, although what follows is a bit more low-key in energy.
The cage. Point in 17158. Roger, Rainbird. Did the cage sink to the bottom? That's very possible.
Kenji Kawai is the composer of Deep Fear, a notable Japanese composer in the film and anime space since the mid-80s. This is one of his few times as a game composer. We cut a few months ahead to April, to our protagonist, John Mayer. No, not the one wanting to run through his high school hallways screaming at the top of his lungs. Not M-A-Y-E-R. Mayer as in M-A-Y-O-R, the mayor of these parts. Although not very fitting considering how the game plays out. A former Navy SEAL, John's fiancée Stella died a couple of years back.
Stella.
I love the flavor text for her photo. Her smile never seems to change. I'd sure hope not. It's a photo after all. Reminds me of that Mitch Hedberg joke about photos.
One time a guy handed me a picture of me and said, here's a picture of me when I was younger. Every picture is of you when you were younger.
Instead of running through the halls of his high school, he's now patrolling the halls of the Big Table. He's part of the Emergency Rescue Service Team, or ERS. He's only been down here for 1 week. We get a call from fellow ERS member Mookie. In short order, Mookie becomes one of those unforgettable survival horror characters.
Chief!
You don't have to yell, Mookie. I can hear you just fine.
Sharon, another crew member, is drowning.
What's going on?
April Fools! Did you forget it's April Fool's Day?
You know, we don't have time for these fun and games.
Sorry, Chief.
Just a prank, bro. What's not an April Fool's joke is what happens to the Seafox. The submarine crashes and is unresponsive. Clancy, the chief controller, sends us to find out what happened, with emphasis on rescuing Dr. Gina Weisberg, head of research into a project that we know nothing about. Something above our pay grade and security clearance. It's on the Seafox where we witness the first monstrosities we'll deal with throughout Deep Fear. It's a great cutscene introducing them into the fold. One thing you'll notice right away is being able to move and shoot at the same time. No need to stand still and shoot. I have to make note of John's running animation. The way he leans a bit too far forward, and how he seems to move faster than he should with those steps. It looks a bit silly, which adds to some of the game's charm. With static fixed cameras, I had to remind myself on the regular I can move and shoot. You also don't need to hold down a button to aim. You press a button to bring your gun up or down. And this is something you have to keep in mind when leaving an area. You can't enter a door with your weapon drawn. If you have a creature in pursuit, you have to take this into consideration. John takes his sweet time putting his gun away, and it's something that adds up over the course of the game. A minor annoyance in the grand scheme of things, but something to note. Having moments of getting to the next room would have been a lot more tense if the game was more difficult. Deep Fear, beyond a couple moments, is not a difficult game whatsoever. There's a few reasons for that. One is how generous the game is with ammo. There are rooms spread throughout the base where you can replenish your gun's ammo. These rooms offer unlimited amounts of ammo. You're never too far from one. There was only one point in the game's end stretch where I came close to running out of ammo before I came across a storage room. The amount of ammo your gun can hold at one time is also very generous. You can even find items throughout to expand your gun's ammunition count. And these aren't the only items that are generous in their placement. Basic health kits and air grenades, which I'll cover later, have spots where they have unlimited supply. To note, you can only carry a certain amount at one time, but you don't have to worry about a limited inventory or item box in Deep Fear. The game forgoes making use of them. With how often we come across rooms where we can replenish our ammo, I don't think it would have been too difficult to implement a limited inventory, something that would have added more of a challenge to Deep Fear, and would have been a welcome one. That said, I don't fault survival horror titles that decide to pass on using limited inventories. But with how often we come across these rooms for ammo, it could have worked. For more of a challenge, they could have had each storage room with a finite amount of ammo. To add to the game's ease are the enemies themselves. With how much ammo we have on hand or nearby, there's little challenge with them. Enemies don't take much to go down, which is too bad because there's a decent variety of enemies, and they look great. There's a consistency across their various designs. This being a 32-bit era title, jagged polygons give plenty of room for the player to fill in the blanks. If you want, you can see the designs in their full glory with the excellent concept art. Famed Japanese illustrator Yasushi Nirasawa was in charge of the designs. While primitive, we can get a better view of them from the game's many cutscenes. Deep Fear has an interesting way of guiding our eyes to items. Old school survival horror has several ways of getting them to stand out from the environment. Resident Evil would have shiny objects. Games like Silent Hill would have our character's head snap to an item. Deep Fear uses lighting to guide us to what to look at in the environment, what we can interact with. Sure, all games do this, but it's quite prominent in Deep Fear, as if there's a spotlight on the object in question. Of course, if the game came out today, there'd be yellow paint splattered everywhere nearby. One of Deep Fear's unique features is the air system. Depending on our location in the big table, air is limited. We'll know if this is the case through the countdown timer in the top right corner. If the timer runs down to 0, John will put on his regulator breathing apparatus. If this bar reaches 0, it's game over. There are a few ways to deal with this. One is using the air system found in the room. We could use them to pump in fresh air. This will replenish the timer. We can also use an air system to replenish our regulator, refilling our air meter. Some air systems also act as save points. Another option is using an air grenade. You could use them in a pinch to return some air to a room. Not to the extent of using the air system, but there may be times it's the only option. A welcome design choice is having a separate button for grenades. No need to go to a menu to swap between a gun and grenade. These aren't the only grenades we could grab. There are some of the fragging variety. Like ammo and basic health kits, there are points where we could find air grenades with a never-ending supply. We can only carry a certain amount at one time, but it's a generous number. While it's an interesting idea and could add a layer of decision-making and challenges, Deep Fear does little with the system. It's a glorified timer to make sure you're not lollygagging around. Even then, it's very generous in how much time most rooms offer. And even if a room runs out of air, you still have your regulator, which takes its time to drop to 0. It's something that feels like a minor inconvenience instead of a threat you have to always be aware of, which is the name of the game when it comes to Deep Fear. Threats are an exception and not the norm. There's a lot you could do with an air system like this. One idea that pops to mind right away is limiting the use of how many times we could use these air systems. As is, it's like ammo, replenish whenever need be, and it's unlimited. Or if several rooms were only covered by one air system. That would ramp up the challenge factor. Although in that situation, frustration would be a probable outcome. Of course, the easiest approach would be to bump up the difficulty with them. Have rooms with shorter time limits. Give our regulator less air. There are a few cases where we'll enter a room with next to no air, but it's easy to deal with, whether through an air grenade or a nearby air system. There's a funny bit early on where a guy dies while standing right next to an air system. Come on buddy, it's right there. All you have to do is reach out and use it. Flooded rooms are a common occurrence in our journeys. Does John swim through them? No, he runs through them, leading to much amusement. Now, I get it. Programming and swimming with fixed camera angles would have been an additional step with little benefit. With how much early 3D titles struggle with swimming controls, I'm fine with this compromise. One thing that Deep Fear lacks is puzzles. Sure, the maze-like structure of the space is enough of a puzzle as is. Several areas blend into one another, but it would have been nice to have a few more puzzles spread throughout. There is one puzzle of mixing compounds with the right ratio. What's the correct ratio? Well, it's someone's birthday, of course, the classic code for many survival horror title puzzles. And that's about it when it comes to puzzles and the gameplay itself. It's nothing spectacular. They could have gone far more mileage out of the air system, but as it stands, is bare bones. It's other areas of Deep Fear that carry it to an enjoyable, memorable experience.
A bonus?
Oh, they're full of it, those Navy muscle heads, shutting me out and starting this mess.
Let's go through the major beats and highlights of Deep Fear, so spoilers ahead. Mookie uses the monster's first appearance to negotiate for earlier vacation time.
Wait! Okay, I'll do it! I'll do it! But on the condition that you give me my vacation 1 week earlier. Then I'll take you around the Navy area wherever you want.
Okay, I'll see to it you get topside earlier.
Alright, I gotta get out of here. This place gives me the creeps.
Bless your heart, Mookie. Every time you show up, you have something memorable to say. He is a standout character of Deep Fear, and the game full of them. Some intentional, some unintentional. At least I think. As requested by Clancy, we find Dr. Gina Weisberg, head of research. She bears a strong resemblance to John's dead fiancée, Stella.
Stella? It can't be. Gina Weisberg? MI? Head researcher?
Oh, that's an interesting direction to take things, Deep Fear. Let's see how this unfolds. In tow is her monkey, Anthony. We bring them back to the main base, where we'll meet another crew member, Danny.
Whoa, your boyfriend? Just kidding.
As you could hear, Deep Fear's voice acting is classic old-school survival horror cheese, with many line readings leaving a lot to be desired. It's part of the early survival horror charm. It's up there with the likes of the first Resident Evil in its questionable quality. There are several lines throughout where it sounds like a brief flub, splicing together takes, or an awkward line read, or a combination of the three, like they did 1 or 2 takes tops, said great, and moved on.
I'll go to Commander Clancy's room.
John has several of these throughout Deep Fear.
Anything was possible with Colonel McCoy.
As things seem to return to normal, trouble strikes from the Sea Fox once again. Someone from within the Sea Fox is launching missiles at the big table.
Commander, the Sea Fox missile hatch is...
What?
This is an ROV picture. The Poseidon could be launched at any moment. Someone is operating it from inside.
What John is dealing with is well above his pay grade and security clearance level. With the Navy SEALs still some time from arriving, Clancy sends John, a former Navy SEAL, back to the Sea Fox to find out what's going on. We head back there with Mookie, have a boss fight, and disarm the other missiles. As we do, the Sea Fox becomes dislodged and looks to crash further into the ocean. It's escape time for John. I love the music that plays during these countdown stretches. It's one of the better beat-the-clock music tracks I've come across in the game. Kenji Kawai is earning his paycheck here. It also stands out as music is sparse throughout Deep Fear. Most areas only have the background hums of the environment, which work with the setting, building that sense of isolation several hundred meters below the ocean's surface. Heading back from the Sea Fox, we bring back a survivor, who doesn't seem to be doing so hot. And in the moment where John's IQ drops several points, he leaves the survivor alone with Mookie. Within a heartbeat, the survivor transforms and kills Mookie as John watches on.
Okay!
Damn, Deep Fear. You did Mookie dirty. We're only getting started here and you've already killed him off? I thought he was going to be our ride or die homie. Although this is a horror title, I guess the black dude has to die first. But it's not like he was the only option. We had Danny and his no-nonsense attitude as a choice. I was expecting Mookie to make a late-game sacrifice, but he expires well before that. He adds so much to the early game's charm of deep fear with all his baseball talk.
How's the little shark?
Best conditions. Like the Yankees in '96.
And while Deep Fear has other great characters and moments, there is something missing after Mookie's death. Let's make sure his death is not in vain. Further exploring the big table, we'll reunite with Gina in her room. She's researching this parasite that's been affecting others. I haven't mentioned it yet, but John currently has a cold. If he remains still long enough, he'll sneeze. Throughout various cutscenes, he'll sneeze or cough. Despite being up close and personal with these creatures, he seems to be okay while others have turned. Is having the common cold a key to being immune to what's happening?
I have had this cold since last night.
Cold? Have you been attacked by a creature? Any other symptoms besides a cold?
I've been attacked a couple of times. Really, no other symptoms.
I mean, of all the things that could help, having the common cold is pretty handy. Adults get an average of 2 to 4 colds a year. Funny enough, while writing the script, I myself had a cold. Colds are very contagious. There's a memo we could find in the apartment section telling us not to catch a cold. Gina herself seems fine, considering she was on the Sea Fox and doesn't have a cold. And there seems to be a romance blossoming between the two.
John, thanks for everything.
You're welcome, Dr. Weisberg.
Call me Gina.
Okay, Gina.
Although I'm not sure what to make of the fact with how Gina looks like Stella, John's dead fiancée. We all grieve and heal in different ways. I guess this is one way of dealing with the death of a loved one. It's not like other horror game protagonists haven't had their share of questionable approaches to grief. And John, just in case, maybe you should spread that cold of hers to her, to help her with a possible infection. According to her research notes, she estimates that this parasite, if exposed to the outer world, will wipe out all mammals in about 11 days. Pretty scary stuff. To note, the parasite shows a weakness to oxygen, so if it reached the surface, how effective would it be? That said, there's plenty of mammals in the ocean, which would have far-reaching consequences. There's mention of a Deep Blue project, but what that is remains unknown to John at this point. Something far beyond his pay grade and his security clearance level. Heading to the apartment area of the big table, we meet another member of Deep Fear's memorable cast. This is Anna, a diver and our resident action girl.
Do I look like a monster?
In a way, yes.
I'm Anna Lawrenson, DN Company diver. What are you doing here?
She's not alone. She's seeking her companion Rambo.
A bulldog, my companion. I usually let him roam around here. If something happens, he usually returns right away. But in these conditions, I'm worried.
We'll find Rambo first, feeding him a hamburger we find. Anna is very appreciative of this, and gives us information to find a torch we could use to get a stuck door open. She also provides us a weapons key card so we could grab a shotgun. This makes short work of most enemies, even more so than the other guns. One item we could find in the apartment is a videotape labeled Sexual Body. That's intriguing to say the least. What are its contents? Well, that's not what I was expecting. I'm wagering that Dubois made this tape. Oh, Dubois. He's one eccentric individual. He's the one with the falsetto voice I started the video with. A falsetto that likes to drop off at various points.
Oh, definitely. It's from the air unit area. It's howling at the top of its lungs. I wonder if it's wearing down.
Can it be fixed?
Oh, not right away. Oh, by the way, Commander Clancy was looking for you.
Okay.
He was the designer of the Big Table facility. According to the manual, he started his career as a computer engineer after graduating at the top of his MIT class. He would then change fields to become a civil engineer, mastering the field in short time. With how eccentric he is, it wouldn't surprise me if he uses this video to blow off steam, if you catch my drift. And I'm not judging. With what people are into from various corners of the internet these days, this is nothing really noteworthy. There is a man in possession of the torch we need, but sends us on a fetch quest for data before handing it over. Something that's one floor and one room over. He couldn't do this himself. Then again, he is a civilian and there are monsters about. But he's got a torch in hand. That could come in handy against them. And no, we can't use this torch as a weapon. It's only to open the door. Despite English not being this guy's first language, at least he doesn't flub any lines, which John does during this conversation.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I can go back to my company. This is what was promised.
Your company is fine too, but you have to get out of here alive first.
With the torch, we open the door back to CCD, where we began Deep Fear. We've come full circle. On the note of level design, there's little of the looping level design that's common in survival horror. There's little usage of opening up shortcuts. Areas tend to be self-contained. It makes sense for the setting, but it lacks what makes classic environments like the Spencer Mansion so memorable. Several areas blur into one another. The Navy SEAL team has now arrived, including some who've worked with John in the past, one being their leader, Colonel McCoy. To note, a colonel is not a SEAL's rank. Cher and Gina both come by to chat with John. We now learn about the death of John's dead fiancée, Stella. Sharon takes an exit before John goes into detail. Something to note for later. Stella was Colonel McCoy's sister. She died in a storm while out yachting with John. With how John tells the story, it sounds like he's recounting a time he got his hand caught in the cookie jar.
To a storm, the yacht was like a leaf in the wind. Stella was thrown out into the ocean. I tried to save her. There was nothing I could do. I survived. Colonel McCoy said nothing to me. That made it even worse. I couldn't handle the guilt, and I left the team.
Oh.
Even if I want to forget it, I can't.
We're off to a new area of the big table where the SEALs are being massacred. This is a great cutscene heading over, with an eerie vocal track playing as unseen monsters kill the Navy SEALs. They must be dealing with something big here. No, nothing serious. We have a boss fight against this little guy. Colonel McCoy did say John was one of his best men. With how the monsters wreck the other SEALs, I could see why. John makes short work of them. These other SEALs could have used a bit more training, or maybe their standards have slipped. After a long chain of events, a fighter pilot from the surface crashes into the base's power reserves. Are we going to play upcoming stretches in darkness? No, the backup reserves go up right away without a hitch. I was hoping to see Deep Fear throw a few more hurdles our way as we move into the game's second disc. Return to Clancy, he's none too happy, and we learn more about his past.
I spent most of my life in a submarine, but the government looks at one mistake and cuts me off from my dreams by locking me up in this ocean floor prison.
One mistake?
Oh, one of the submarine missiles I launched hit a passenger ship, and it sunk. I was in disputed waters right before a war.
Talking with Danny after, we'll learn that firing at that civilian ship wasn't a mistake, but intentional on his part. All for Clancy trying to climb the ranks, which as we could see wasn't the outcome. And that's a questionable way to try to raise your rank. What did he have in mind here? I'm no expert in international affairs, war crimes, or climbing the military ladder, but this doesn't seem the right way to go about it. Getting reassigned to the big table seems pretty generous, all things considered. Clancy wants us to round everyone up. Then we'll use the ship the SEALs brought here to escape. So it sounds like the game's gonna open up, doesn't it? Give us the choice in how we round up the crew? No, that's not the case. We have to do things in the order the game wants us to, which leads to one of the game's most frustrating moments. Clancy mentions Dubois in the energy sector, a place we haven't been yet. Okay, let's look at the map and plan a route. The map gives a full layout of the base. Makes sense to have this information on us, instead of needing to unlock it. Using the map, I plan on a route to get to the energy sector. I enjoyed doing this. It gives a nice sense of exploration that Deep Fear doesn't exactly deliver in droves. Well, it turns out I can't access the elevator down to where Dubois is. So I wander around for a while until I run into Danny. He tells us to use the elevator, the one I was at before. Now there's no one blocking the way. I was a few steps ahead of the game. Instead of rewarding me, it punished me. What makes things even worse is how the next hour or so devolves into fetch quests. Until now, Deep Fear has done a decent job of driving the plot forward, moving us to new areas. Now it stalls in one of the worst stretches of padding I've come across in a while. Before we could reach the energy sector, we run back and forth fetching various items for others. It's as if they felt the game wasn't long enough and needed to increase its length. You could cut out most of the stretch and leave a few of the hurdles to get to Dubois for a better experience. Now, it's not all bad. There are some noteworthy moments along the way, like this cow. I really hope this doesn't transform later, or learning about Danny's crush on Anna.
If you see Anna, could you tell her that she doesn't need to act so macho? She's cute if she's quiet.
Tell her yourself.
If I could, I wouldn't be asking you.
There's also one of the funniest catch moments I've come across in some time.
Here, I'll give you this. It's the Navy area ID card key.
Like John, Anna is now suffering from a cold. Damn, look how jacked Anna's in-game model is. Anna? More like Abby. One of the items we obtain on this long-wanted fetch quest is the gum gun. We use it to fix a leak. It's quite the visual and auditory experience. Well, the description says it shoots a glue-like material. This is what Dubois must do while watching that sexual body videotape of the big table. So that cold that Anna has, well, it doesn't amount to much as she turns. We face her in a boss fight. Poor Rambo isn't going to like the result of this, and he's just chilling here after the fight. Sorry, boy. Anna being action girl, I wasn't expecting her to survive the game, but not like this. I was expecting her to die holding off a wave of enemies as we escape, especially once I saw she had a cold as well. But at long last we can make our way to the energy section where Dubois is. After various fetching of items, we can now use the Big Jim, a diving suit. A name like Big Jim gives you so many opportunities for sexual innuendos. And this is pretty cool. We're out on the ocean floor. Well, enjoy it while it lasts. This is the only time we get to move around here. And these goddamn fish. They do little damage, but they are relentless in how they poke and prod at you. I can never seem to hit them either, even while locking on. That Japanese guy we got the torch from earlier, seems he fell victim to their poking and prodding ways. Dubois sends us on another fetch quest for some explosives, although it's only a couple of rooms away. While grabbing these explosives, we run into the old SEAL leader, McCoy, the brother of John's dead fiancée, Stella. He's on the verge of transforming into a monster. Seems like he would have made a nice brother-in-law under different circumstances.
It's a Colt. M1991A1. It's from my father's generation. The pride of a strong America.
He decides to go out on his own terms as another one bites the dust.
I'm taking you with me! Damn monster!
Right after arming the explosives, Dubois faces the same fate. He's on the verge of turning, and he has some interesting parting words to tell John.
Oh, John, you're a real man.
As mentioned earlier, having Mayor as a surname isn't exactly fitting for John. People are dying left, right, and center around him. I wouldn't vote for him. I do know someone who would vote for John. That would be Sharon, and like the others, she joins them in the afterlife. Chekhov's cow turns into a monstrosity, killing her. And this is one terrifying cow. Great design. Like Dubois, she has interesting final words to share with John.
When you get back,
What?
would you have an ice cream with me?
Of course.
Her room is nearby. We can grab the key to it from her corpse. Of all the photos she has of dolphins, there's one of John. Remember that prank at the beginning of the game with her and Mookie?
What's going on?
April Fools!
Well, Sharon has a huge crush on John. She was hoping to get some mouth-to-mouth, which she no doubt wished led to other things. She wanted to show him that her body was a wonderland. And that's about as much knowledge as I have with John Mayer's catalog of songs, and our numbers only continued to dwindle. Clancy decides to peace out in the ship that the SEALs came in, leaving us all behind. He's still going on about that promotion of his in the military brass.
My life means more than all of you small fish. I can't end my days here. I need to get back at the people in Washington who treated me like a criminal. The survivors. I can't let them live.
He should have double-checked the ship before leaving. Anna makes another appearance, but Danny sacrifices himself so we can escape. And like a good boy, Rambo shows up at the right time to leave with us. Another long series of events leave us in dire straits. Our only hope now is to wait for help. There's only John, Gina, Anthony, and Rambo left. Although Anthony and Rambo have ran off as we awaken. Anthony seems to be a kindred spirit of Gina.
Anthony was always alone. I grew up in an orphanage. I could never count on someone and had no real friends. Anthony's like that too. He wanted friends. I know that feeling well. We're alike in a lot of ways, and we understand each other. When I found Anthony, I felt like I had somebody. I wasn't alone anymore.
Maybe Danny was onto something in an earlier line from the game.
Your boyfriend?
This last stretch is in familiar territory, but flipped upside down. There are several areas we can now access that we couldn't before. It's a nice reuse of an old area, but throwing a few more hurdles our way, like having to read the map upside down. We need to find components to fix the communication system. Along the way, we'll finally get answers about what the Deep Blue project is. What kind of classified research was being conducted? Well, it turns out that Anthony was on the space pod that we saw return to Earth in the game's intro. Anthony was part of Project Mercury, a NASA spaceflight program that began in the late 1950s. Unlike the others who returned, Anthony remained in space for around 40 years. This led me down a rabbit hole about monkeys in space. It was a means of testing the feasibility and safety of space travel. The first successful attempt was with Albert II in 1949. The year prior, Albert I suffocated before reaching space. Albert II would die upon re-entry when the capsule's parachute failed. The longest the monkey has been in space is a little under 2 weeks. So Anthony has beat them by quite some amount of time. Upon finding Anthony, he was in a near-death hibernation state. This was how the parasite that's been affecting others was born. Gina theorizes the prolonged exposure to space radiation caused this transformation. The purpose of the Deep Blue project is to find a way to harness this parasite for beneficial purposes, like using it for suspended animation, allowing for deep space travel. Clancy brought in Gina to be head of research. No doubt he wanted his promotion as well. You know, Clancy, this is a much better way of doing so than blowing up a civilian ship, or your attempt to leave us behind. After all, isn't the captain supposed to go down with the ship? John looks to put an end to this by killing Anthony, but Gina won't let him. At that moment, she herself transforms into this giant blob. After gunning that down, she turns into her true form. One that feels out of step with everything we've come across so far, like something out of a different game. Reminds me of Nephilim from Blue Stinger. I mean, this is the last boss and all, but it was a bit of an immersion breaker. Good thing I grabbed the assault rifle with the weapons key card we could find during the stretch. Everything so far thrown our way in Deep Fear hasn't been much of a challenge. Gina's final form? She's a pain to deal with. She takes a ton of bullets to go down, and can do some nasty damage with her attacks, ones that are tricky to dodge. Gina returns to her senses, realizing her mistake. We set off the self-destruct as she and Anthony stay behind while we leave in the space pod. Throughout this end stretch I kept thinking, where is Rambo? Did John forget about him? Well, the game was thinking ahead here. He's been waiting like a good boy in the space pod the entire time. Along with Rambo, the dolphin we freed that Sharon was caring for makes an appearance. I sure hope it wasn't infected, else we've made a terrible mistake. Or John doesn't decide to transform out the blue. Or Rambo. Then again, they might be okay due to the parasite's weakness to oxygen. With the dolphin, I'm not so sure. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Or as the songwriter John Mayer says, waiting on the world to change. Okay, there, now I've more or less exhausted my knowledge of John Mayer's songs. But if Gina's research is correct, it won't take long for the world to change if the parasite does make it out. Less than 2 weeks. But that's left up in the air. What does John do afterwards? Who knows? I hope he does take care of Rambo, and doesn't run for mayor. Because everyone around him is dead. I was expecting Deep Fear to end with John and Gina escaping, and starting a life together. Deep Fear is begging for multiple endings, although we only get one. What if we get a bad ending from losing the fight against Gina, where she and Anthony head back to the surface? Or John stays behind to go down with the big table. Everyone else is dead, so why not him? But that's where Deep Fear ends. An interesting title from the early days of survival horror, when everyone was trying to get in on the Resident Evil craze. One with its own merits and brings its ideas to the big table, no pun intended. Yet the execution isn't quite there. As it was a release at the tail end of the Sega Saturn's life, I have to wonder if having it as an early Dreamcast title would have been better. On that note, some of the senior level staff did go on to work on Extermination, one of the, if not the first survival horror title on the PS2. By no means is Deep Fear an overlooked title that you shouldn't miss out on. It's a relic of the early days of survival horror. It delivers in droves on the cheese factor. It's too bad the gameplay and its ideas can't reach the same levels. If you have a passing curiosity on the early days of survival horror, consider giving it a try. You can do much better, but you could also do worse. Plus, you can experience the joys of characters like Mookie for yourself.
Big hitter Mookie is safe at home.
Mookie, we have to go again.
What?